home is where the heart is. For this week's guests, I'd imagine that social distancing has been a huge shock to the system. Then again, I'd also imagine that probably anywhere with an audience is home to them. To channel the great, amazing Stephen Sondheim and Elaine Stritch, I don't need a lot, only what I got, plus a tube of grease paint and a follow spot. For a select few, home is in front, leading the troops. Others are more comfy, hiding in the shadows. For some, home is in the bright white spotlight. Others make their home in the trenches, heard but not seen. I'm John Fox, the principal percussionist of the Singapore Symphony Orchestra. Lea Salonga and her brother Gerard draw huge crowds across the world. While they're seemingly comfortable in almost any situation, both remain deeply grounded in their home of the Philippines. And without further delay, let's head right to the Philippines and say hello to Lea Salonga.
Hi, John. Good to be here.
Good to see you. And let's add another to the mix. Gerard is joining us from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where he's resident conductor of the Malaysian Philharmonic. Hello, Gerard.
Hey, John. Nice to see you. Greetings from sunny and warm KL. Well, it's sunny and warm everywhere on this feed anyway.
It looks like it. You guys will have a great performance later, but first let me say you are a dynamic duo. You guys have done it all individually, together. Maybe, Lea, I'll throw it to you first about how are you even keeping sane during this times without a live audience right in front of you, feeding off that energy?
Yeah, it's a little something to get used to, but thankfully I have some film experience where it's kind of the same. So I've been keeping sane here at home with working with yarn, either knitting or crocheting, learning how to bake, learning how to cook more stuff that I didn't already know how. And also we've been doing under a banner called Bayanihan Musikahan, where one of our national artists named Ryan Cayabyab sounded a call to all these singers and musicians to do concerts from home to help raise funds for the more vulnerable members of society here in the Philippines. And as of the last accounting, I think Bayanihan Musikahan has raised over 122 million pesos. And I think the first concerts began in the middle of March with Maestro Cayabyab doing the very first one. And the very final concert was on May 30th with one of our hugest concert artists, Gary Valenciano, doing a 3-hour stream of just music and just telling stories and all that. So it's been quite a lot of fun, I think, for everybody involved, and it also gave every artist a platform to entertain and to sing. And the weird part was not getting an audience response, but if you're on Facebook Live and if you turn on your comments, or if you have like a separate device where you can see all the comments coming in, and you had and they also showed you how many people were actually watching, you'd have like thousands of people tuning in and a lot of people donating. And so you had in real time some sort of instant feedback, even though it wasn't that same audible and visual feedback that you'd get in a live venue, but it was something. And it's always a good thing for me anyway to sing and to know that I'm entertaining a large group of people.
You go with the flow tremendously well. If there's a technical hiccup, or if you're getting personal about something, it's clearly not done in 10,000 takes. You're really kind of moving along, and you're doing good with awareness and the charity, but it really feels personal.
Yeah, and I think for everybody it's personal. And on the same night that I did my very first feed, there was an opera singer, a pair of opera singers, husband and wife. And when she was singing, I think at one point in her stream, she started breaking down because she said it had been a couple of weeks since she last performed or sang. So she was clearly feeling, the effects of the absence of just being able to do what it was she clearly was passionate about and loved. so it touched me, and it made me get all verklempt watching her. And so when I started doing mine, I was getting all emotional as well, because then you realize, oh my God, I really do love this. And and it's a good thing to be able to show your vulnerability to an audience, which is something that you don't always opt to show to like a live audience. You want everything to be smooth and clean, and for nothing to go wrong. And I guess the nature of doing one of these live streams is that with any sort of tech, anything can go wrong. So you kind of have to tell yourself you'd better go with the flow and just roll with the punches and hope that everything turns out okay. And I guess as long as you kind of keep your wits about you and stay calm, then everything will be okay.
Gerard, how are you keeping your wits about you there with the lack of live performances? I'm going to guess you're probably not crocheting and cooking, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, he's cooking though.
Cooking. I'm very proud to say that from the beginning of, we never really called it a lockdown here in Malaysia. We called it the movement control order. And from the beginning of that, when all the restaurants closed down and all you had was delivery and cooking yourself, all but 5 meals that I've had since then were prepared by me. So yeah, my cooking game has gone up.
I stand corrected. Is it good though? Is it good?
Well, I'm still upright. I haven't gone to the hospital yet, so I guess it's all been pretty serviceable.
Lea, can you confirm his skills here, his culinary skills?
When we were living in Boston, actually, he did a little bit of the cooking. I mean, my mom did most of it, but he can cook a real good steak. He can cook eggs. So I knew that he was, and we're our mother's children, so of course we will know how to cook. But my baking is far better than my cooking. But yeah, he's going to make sure that whatever he eats is going to be delicious. So I think his repertoire, though, has expanded since the movement control order in Malaysia began.
Yeah, I mean,
my claim
luckily,
to fame is actually I've burnt spaghetti before.
Wow.
That's hard.
I'm that good. I'm that good.
You're gifted, John. That truly.
Gerard, you're actually also separated from your family right now, right?
Yes, that's the first 2 weeks. I think were the hardest because I was really supposed to come to Malaysia and be away from them for a little while to do stuff here, but when it started drawing past the date that I was supposed to either go back home or for them to come here, that's when I really started to feel it because your mind, you're expecting to see your family in a couple of weeks, and here we are nearly 3 months on and I still haven't seen them. I mean having WhatsApp and Facebook and FaceTime, all that stuff, it's good, it helps. I mean 20 years ago we'd had to deal with long distance calling, and that would have made it a lot worse, but it's tough, but you have to get used to it, you have to deal with it, and you just have to be grateful that everybody's safe. I mean, that's what I'm more worried about now more than anything, is that everyone is safe and happy, as much as possible.
Right. Well, the last time that you came, Gerard, to see us at the Singapore Symphony was the TV Themes concert, right?
Yeah, check that out. That was my first time.
It reminds me, during the week, every day there was a banter between conductor, you, and our orchestra about the pieces and sort of collecting memories, associating them with specific times in our lives. And it was an incredible rhythm of rehearsal, I thought. And it really showed through in sort of an almost stream of conscious concert where you were riffing a little bit with the audience, but then you asked the orchestra to do something and suddenly we're ready to go. We built up this sort of thing. And that was an amazing experience for me. First time working with you there. The other thing is, I noticed only at the concert how you constructed the program to have this sort of dramatic, extended TV show type of rhythm where it had this flow to it and drama and then a funny section and this and that. And we all kind of heaved a sigh of relief, where I think you can see it in this in that photo. Really, really a job well done. How do you put together a program like that?
Wow, it's amazing that you picked up all that stuff because that's not what I was thinking about. Basically, you just try to you think you have all these pieces, and they're all so different, and you look, okay, what's immediately following or what's immediately before a certain kind of music, and you try to develop a, like what you said, a flow. It wasn't purposely a television arc, but it was just a nice concert flow where you don't have you try to take people to different places. That's really all it is. It wasn't really anything big. There was a lot of back and forth between me and the SSO artistic administration to get in the number one, get in the selections that we thought would work for the Singaporean audience, because it could be all sorts of stuff that I would have liked, but if it didn't relate with the audience, if the audience couldn't relate to the stuff that we were playing that night, it just wouldn't have worked. So there was a lot of input as to what would work with Singaporeans, and I really hope. Well, and judging from the audience reaction, it seems like everybody had a pretty good time.
So then you're talking about an arc and things. It's built in, I think, in your subconscious at least, to build a program like this. Maybe it's as much in your DNA to do film score and pop music or whatever as it would be to do a meat and potatoes thing like Beethoven and Brahms.
Yeah, I've been doing pops concerts ever since I started working. So like, I guess there's a sort of a natural feel for that. Um, but as far as what makes up my DNA, it's the symphonic rep stuff is all very, very new still to me, because I got into that relatively recently. I mean, I didn't have the job in Hong Kong as assistant conductor until 2016, and then I started this job here with MPO last year, 2019. So it's all really new stuff, and yeah, I think programming a concert like that was pretty straightforward for me, just because I'd done it so many times. Yeah, you're right.
Stuff that you had done before then must be, you're talking about the recordings you worked on with Diana Krall and Babyface and Brian McKnight, and special projects at Disney and the Hollywood Bowl and LA Philharmonic, and involvement in Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, and yeah, baby, the spy who shagged me. I mean,
Yeah, that was an interesting
incredible
time in my
stuff.
life. Yeah, I was working in Los Angeles as a copyist. As you know, when you're a foreign student in the U.S., the INS gives you 365 days to work legally after graduation, and I used up that time to live and work in Los Angeles as a copyist. Got a couple of references from alumni from Berkeley, and they pointed me towards these places, and I signed up. And a few days later, got a call: "Hey, come over. We need a guy to type out on Finale." And that's what it was at the time. Sibelius was brand new. This was 1998, so it's quite a while ago. And the options at the time in LA were to be a good hand copyist or be good with Finale, and that's what I was using, and that's what I still use now.
Wow. Well, I've always thought the arrangers and copyists and librarians are not only probably among the hardest working folks, but also underappreciated. Maybe I can help you bring this to the forefront a little bit. If we can go back, we have this photo. You can comment on what we're looking at here. What is this?
Oh wow, that was from, I would think, 2009, if I remember it right. Because judging by the software I'm using, it's probably 2009. Um, I used to work at a recording studio in Manila. Worked there for 6 years, and the projects we did were scoring for TV, recording projects, scoring for film, um, and that was my scoring rig. I had to do a orchestral mock-up or even final product using a virtual orchestra. I used to call it the EFO, the electronic fake orchestra, and it involved tons of computers. And yeah, what's not seen in the picture is, to the left of the desk there are 6 PCs for all the orchestral samples, because of the 2 GB limit of of the old operating systems. But yeah, that was a very interesting time. A lot of lonely hours in the studio.
And also, librarian.
Yeah, the first gig. It's funny. The first time I walked into the copy office, the office manager said, "Oh, so you graduated recently from Berkeley?" "Oh, yeah," and I was very proud of it. I got Latin honors and all this stuff. "Okay, here's a roll of tape. Go to the back over there and stick those parts together." So that was that was my first job. And when I have to do it now, the photo shows. I think that must be 2015. Um, when I have to do it for myself, for a big print job at home, it brings me back to my youth, taping parts together,
Wow.
and it's
Imagine
therapeutic.
people like you, going through so much effort just so that we in orchestras can mess it up live. You go through so many steps, but don't worry. I mean, when we do something wrong, you'll get the blame. So there is credit
Yeah.
involved. But man, maybe it's a good chance to go to Lea for a minute, because you also kind of refuse to be pigeonholed into one area or genre. I'm interested in going to you at age 18 for a moment, not talking about
Okay.
your incredible realization of this amazingly deep character, Kim, but about the audition itself, because there's
Right.
a crossover with what we do in orchestra as well. Do you
Uh-huh.
remember what that audition was like, and was it a typical theater audition?
It had been a while since I had done any sort of auditions. I think at that point I was mostly in school, and I was in university. I was in my freshman year. I was a pre-med student. Um, and when the auditions were announced in Manila for this new West End musical called Miss Saigon, I hadn't auditioned for anything in a very long, long, long while. So I honestly don't know. At that point, I didn't know what a typical, audition would have been for, say, something like this. But it was, if I recall it correctly, there was my first day, which was me getting into the room and handing over my resume, singing On My Own from Les Mis, and then The Greatest Love of All, which was at the time popularized by Whitney Houston. That was the first day, and then them asking me a bunch of questions. One of which was, "What was the largest audience you had ever played for? What size?" And Cameron talks about it later. Cameron McIntosh, the producer, talks about it later in interviews, saying, "Oh, I thought that she was just in some little hut somewhere." And then I said, "Oh, I was opening for a Stevie Wonder concert, and I think there was about 10,000 people. I don't know. It was dark. Could have been more." And Alain Boublil then laughs and looks at me and says, "I think you just answered our question." So that was fun. And then I was called in to come back 2 days later, and that's when I started learning the songs from the show. Sun and Moon, I'd Give My Life for You, Movie in My Mind. I think those were the three. And it was me in a room for about 3 or 4 hours or something. It was just hours and hours long. And then I came back the next day to learn one more song, and then to basically go through a little bit of sort of staging of I'd Give My Life for You, with Nick Heitner telling me, okay, with a fake, like, bundled up bit of cloth, or like a tablecloth or something, to kind of pretend it's a baby. And yeah, and I do remember it being quite intense. And then not long after that, I headed off to London for these things called final assessments. And I stood on top of the stage at Theatre Royal Drury Lane. I got to meet Simon Bowman, who eventually got to play Chris. I got to meet another young man, Keith Burns, who was cast as Tui. And I sang with him for his final audition. And I saw the moment when he was told, he was called out into the aisle of the theater, and where Cameron basically told him that you've got the job. And so I saw Keith jumping up and down, and yeah, and I'm like, well, looks like somebody just got employed today. So that's great. And I didn't know until sometime later that I also got hired for the actual part, because about a day or two after those final auditions, I was called into Cameron's office with my mom, and Cameron and Nick Heitner said, "We would like to hire you, but we don't know for what role." And I kind of kept a very stoic face for the whole time, not jumping up and down, not reacting, you know, with any big emotions. And they must have thought, what's wrong with this girl? Because she doesn't react in any significant way to all of this news. Whereas if you told somebody else, they'd be like crying and on the floor and just being so grateful. I'm like, okay. I guess having a life in Manila where, you know, I had something to go back to, maybe that helped. It's like I don't really need this other experience, and it wasn't one of those, that the opening of the chorus line where it's like, I really need this job, I really need this job, and where everybody's just with desperation and sweat, just trying to dance themselves into that production and hoping that it's their number that's called. That was not me at the auditions for Miss Saigon. And I think looking back on it, I'm glad that that's the way that it was, that I didn't come off as, desperate or fawning over any of these people, because I really wasn't aware at the time of the phenomenon that Les Mis was. I didn't until I guess I was already in London for those final assessments, and Cameron treated us to see Les Mis and Phantom and Cats, which were his productions that were all running at the same time in London at the time. Then I got to realize, oh my gosh, this is a big deal.
I have to ask you, do you think if I uploaded my Singapore Symphony audition online, I would also get over 4 million views like your audition video has gotten online?
There's only one way to find out, John.
Yeah, some blooper reel somewhere or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll move on from that. Auditions remain part of your life here in The Voice of the Philippines.
Yes,
And,
they do. Oh my gosh, don't they?
There's no escape. And whether I'm wondering on some level how that connects with you, with your past. I imagine that that you must feel the stress at sometimes from the contestants. I imagine that you must be stressed with the intense recording schedule, that this is also not a comfortable atmosphere necessarily for anyone to do their best job.
No, it's not. But if anything, you get to see who are able to perform under this kind of pressure. I mean, normally auditions would be held behind closed doors. So if it went monumentally terribly, it's easy that when you leave the room, and if you still have all of your, if you still have yourself together, you can kind of brush it off and say, oh, I don't think I'm going to get this job. I don't think I'm going to get hired. And you can kind of play it off a little bit. However, with The Voice, you're auditioning, to an audience in that studio of, say, a couple of hundred. So there really is no brushing any of that off. And then eventually, they don't show all the auditions. They don't show all of the no's. They'll show a select number. But if it's a yes, then you get to be seen by millions and millions of people. And so if you are doing your best work, that means that you are able to perform in a pressure cooker. Because I don't think it gets more high pressure than that. But it's a lot of high pressure also for the coaches, for the judges. And it's all on gut feel who we turn for. And it's not the easiest thing either. And we really have to be discerning, and we really have to listen and, try to really keep our ears open. And to do that for, an extended filming schedule that lasts, hours and hours per day, it's quite exhausting. But when you reach kind of like the last hour, it's like, okay, we still have this many slots to fill. please, you guys, please be good. And you really want everybody that comes on that stage holding that microphone, you want them to be good. You really, really do. And, so when you start to hear them start to fall apart vocally and your chair hasn't turned yet, and it really feels, you feel terribly for the person that's singing, because it's like, oh, I know that under different circumstances you would actually do better. And sometimes we would get intel from the producer and from the writers with them saying, we're not sure what happened because in rehearsal that was not the performance they were giving. I'm like, well, the one that matters is the one they give when we're the ones actually in the chairs and hoping to turn. And when we don't, we wonder what happened.
Do you get to know the orchestra members either at the show or in musicals? Other than the music director, do you ever get to know anyone who's playing in the pit, for instance?
Yes, I get to. I don't get to know everybody, especially if the orchestras are particularly large, but we definitely get to know everyone. I mean, when you share a common space, you start to get a little bit familiar with a few of the faces. But, sometimes the orchestra comes in and then they go into the pit and warm up, or they're underneath the stage and just kind of, there are some people with whom we just really socialize with, like, a lot. And then there are some people that we aren't always aware that they're there. I guess it's just one of those things that happens.
Well, while, like Princess Jasmine is drawing up her whole new world up above, right. Percussionist, my cave of wonders, this was my Aladdin cave of wonders down here. So I don't know if you could function in a space so small, but it's such a shame. This takes so long to figure out the setup and no one even sees it.
Yeah, well, certainly not the audience. I mean, given how that photograph was taken, you'd have to kind of really lean over the stage to take that photograph. That's what it seems like to me.
Exactly. That's true. Gerard, are you still awake over there?
Yeah, I'm still awake, enjoying. I'm still here.
Just wanted to make sure, because I want to now talk about you guys together and bring you back to your childhood. I sound like a therapist here, but the Salonga siblings as kids. Gerard, I want to know.
Oh, look at him. So cute.
Would you like to say look at her as well, Gerard?
No.
If we have a little controversy here today, it's fine. Okay. Gerard, how accurate is that portrayal? You guys, at least at that age, always so lovey-dovey, or did the camera go off and then suddenly you're clawing each other's eyes out or something? No, I mean, what?
Well, that gig was actually the Philippine Professional Photographers Association. So whoever took that picture was a pro. It would they had pretty good timing. But no, I mean, we've always been pretty close. Mom raised us to love each other, and that's just how we grew up, Yeah, the usual brother and sister stuff, but I mean, basically, it was very, very pleasant. I wasn't being bullied or anything by my big sister or anything like that. She was always looking out for me and really, really being a big sister in the good way.
Nice.
Oh, thank heavens.
Then Gerard, what's different about working with an orchestral soloist and working with your sister?
Well, I've been working with Lea. She's been my soloist since I was 7, and when you start working with other people, I was very naive to think that it would just be as easy as that. I had no idea how unique our working style was, and basically had to learn how to do that all over again. It was hard. It was hard starting to work with other people, and I had to take a long time to learn that. I was very, very naive, thinking, oh, it's just going to be like working with sis, and no, it's not. It's not the same. For lots of reasons.
What about you, Lea? The level of communication. Wow. The level of communication, Lea, between you and your brother.
Right? Yeah.
What is that like on these collaborations?
there's a shorthand that we have, and I guess it's an extension of how we are when we're at home. I mean, when we were living at home, I mean, we're still working together, and everything was always, very. Whenever he talks to me, it's very direct. It's because that's just how we are as siblings. It's like, sis, sing this, sis, sing that. Do it this way. It's never there's never ever this conversation of would it be possible if there was never these long sentences leading up to the simplest of instructions. It's always can you try it's always clipped, always really short, truncated, 2 words maybe, if that. Yeah, and I'd usually get what he wanted right away. But normally what I would do is that I would always prepare so thoroughly that he would not need to say anything to me. And yeah, just so that I don't want to give my younger brother a hard time. I mean, he's already going to have a hard time. So if we're going to be, if I'm going to be singing amongst an ensemble of other singers and like a medley, and I'm at the end of the medley, I'm just going to make his job so much easier and I'm going to make sure I'm prepared and I show up knowing my stuff, and he's going to be like, he can tune out, he can totally just relax and focus on the orchestra and not have to worry about me. And he certainly wasn't the first musical director I'd ever worked with. So I think he had to learn how to work with other people, where I got to work with a lot of other people as well as with him. So I knew what it was like working with other musical directors. I knew what it was like working with other conductors and then working with him. So it was I guess a little bit kind of the opposite in my experience. Yeah. But yeah, whenever I'm recording, and like we had to do a cast album, and he put all my solos like last on the list of stuff to record. And I asked him, why did you put me last? I'm like, why am I like the last person? He's like, because when it's you, I don't have to think. So, yeah.
So a recent collaboration of you guys in Philippines and in Singapore is this incredible reimagining of Sweeney Todd. Maybe, Gerard, I start with you talking about the music, this new orchestration. Actually, you've done Sweeney before. The original one that you did, was it the original Jonathan Tunick orchestration before?
Yes, actually both of these were Jonathan Tunick. But the first time I did Sweeney Todd was 2010. And it was using the big one, the one with 3 trombones and a bigger orchestra. When we did it the second time last year, it was like what you say, teeny Todd. It was the much smaller orchestration, but really, really effective. I really love Jonathan Tunick's writing. It's just so smart and really knows how to get the characters through in the orchestration, which is a gift that he has. It's a lot of fun.
Jonathan Tunick is absolutely incredible. But what was it like for you? You get to this more chamber type of version, as it were. You're tackling a score that you're so familiar with it before, with these changes and different textures and all. I mean, you must be wearing kid gloves, or it must be a little strange, a little bizarre for you. You're expecting a meteor orchestration in one spot, and it's not. What is that experience like?
Well, it's weird. We had a full score for the chamber version, but the book that I was reading for rehearsals and for the performance was the original PV, the piano vocal score that was meant for the larger orchestration. So I had to do a lot of reading, have the big score, the full score on one side, and the PV on this side, and just try to make sure everything matched up. The big challenge there actually was the set of parts that normally comes with the small score, with the teeny Todd, is very well known apparently with all the productions that have done it, and for all the wrong reasons. It's riddled with a lot of note errors, and a lot of forensic work was needed to get through all of that and make sure everything was right by showtime.
That's great. Forensic work is a great phrase too, because we moved from Victorian England, Leia, to this out of the box concept of a car junkyard. And Fogg's Asylum is still there, but you'd expect a forensic worker to be nosing around there. How,
Yeah.
it doesn't do you a lot of good, I assume, to be channeling your Angela Lansbury for Mrs. Lovett here. Or does it?
No. The cool thing, though, about this imagining was that it was completely original and that it wasn't taken from any other production previously. There have been quite a few productions that have happened. I mean, the most recent one that I got to see in preparation for the 2019 version that we did in Manila and Singapore took place in a pie shop. The former pastry chef of the White House was actually the one baking these pies. And I had they said it was chicken, but I don't know. But I had a chicken pie with truffle mashed potatoes, and it was just this incredibly delicious meat pie that got me in the mood of the show. And so wherever I had been eating, that's exactly where everybody was going to be performing. And so they used all of the spaces in the audience for this version of the show. It was 4 musicians and 8 actors, some people doubling, in parts. For our version, which we did, it was the Teeny Todd orchestration. And it was staged in sort of like this old, kind of decrepit parking garage. There were still some cars hanging off of sort of like parking levels. Like it looked like they were about to, come to the ground. There was a car that made its entrance with Sweeney and Lovett in it. And basically, it was taken off of something that our director, Bobby Garcia, had done as a young adult, where he and his friends would go into a car and drive over to a really haunted place and tell each other scary stories and scare one another. That's what they would do. So that's kind of what this little troupe of people would do. So it's as if this group would go to a really scary place and tell this one scary story to each other. And the audience became an extension of that, as if they were part of the troupe that would go to this parking garage. And so that's what would happen. So we would be telling the story to one another and then to the audience by extension. And that was the concept. So it's still in Victorian England, and all the references to Victorian England are made, but all the props it's as if we found all of these things either in this garage or brought them in from the outside. So the prologue were people coming in flashlights, looking for stuff to use for this little presentation we were going to do. And that was kind of our little prologue for it. And then the show got underway.
Is there still a factory whistle?
No, it was a sort of like an electric short circuit jolt kind of a sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, it didn't sound like, because that whistle would creep me out. It would sound like a human scream. So, yeah. So it was a little less, less nuts in my ear. Because I always dreaded hearing that whistle every time I'd listen to the cast recording.
I take it you're not necessarily a purist. I think about the Sondheim reimagination of Company as well. Mm-hmm. All these remaking and rethinking, and musicians are playing on stage and things like that. You're not one of the people who would say, come on, it was a masterpiece in 1979, leave it alone.
Yeah, exactly. I think the essence of the production, it was retained, and that's important. And I think even Stephen Sondheim himself isn't a purist about his own works. He, according to people that I know, according to friends of mine that have worked with him, he welcomes reinvention. He welcomes people tinkering around with his stuff. He's not someone that is precious with, how with, say, the Jerome Robbins estate, you have to keep the choreography of, say, West Side Story or maybe The King and I. It has to be what it always was. So revival after revival, that's the same choreography you'd see. But for Sondheim himself, he welcomed people kind of taking something and making it different and making it timely. And And yeah, he was the kind of guy that would welcome all of this kind of stuff.
You and your brother are matches there too then. You guys, neither of you stuck in the past, as it were. I really want to put this to the test to see about how Gerard and Lea,
Oh, goodness
what you
gracious.
really know about each other. You claim to know each other well. You claim to really care about each other.
Yes.
And we're going to put it to a
Okay.
test in a game
Okay.
that we're calling Salonga versus Salonga.
Oh boy.
Sorry, Gerard, I didn't have time to
love
compose a
that.
TV theme to that one. But, you know. What I would like to do, guys, is ask you a few questions about
Okay.
each other or what you think the other would say. And do you
Okay.
have a piece of paper, a marker, something like that in front of you so we can really
Yeah.
see
Yep.
how this goes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okie dokie.
You're on tour. You have to eat fast food. What do you think your siblings' preference will be? What's the choice of food? Go.
Okay. I think I'm pretty.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
You think?
I think.
Then I think, Gerard, we're going to go with
Okay.
you first.
Okay.
Let's see.
Let me just make sure this gets seen. I put down two things. My first choice for her would be pizza, and then the second one would be chicken McNuggets.
No, not pizza. I can't have cheese before a show.
How
So
about the
no on both
McNuggets? Would the
counts?
McNuggets work though?
The nuggets. If I didn't have a choice, I would eat that, but I wouldn't
There
choose
you
that.
go. Okay, I'll put a check mark there. Save that for future.
Okay. Lea, tell me about your brother here.
I put KFC with biscuits and gravy.
That would work. I'd totally be cool with that. I'm not really a picky eater anyway, so whatever she'd put down would work just
He'd eat.
fine. I mean, we were in Shanghai at the airport. You know, we just done a show there called "Do You Hear the People Sing?" And when we got to the airport, we had a lot of time to kill, and there was this. Remember that sis? That this one of these food stalls they were selling xiaolongbao, and we must have had we must have had like 12 a piece or something. We just went wild with the xiaolongbao.
I can't remember. We were all drinking so heavily
Yeah.
over those many days that we were doing it. So I must have been bombed out of my mind. So yeah, but
But it
Xiaolongbao
was-
sounds like
Yeah, but it was good. It was really good.
That sounds
Yeah.
like it happened.
If it counts as
yeah.
fast food, I would have put down xiaolongbao. Yeah.
Okay, now, what was your sibling's favorite TV show in childhood?
Oh. Well, I already know the
So-
answer to that.
We're looking for the favorite TV show when you guys were together in your childhood.
Okay.
You guys are taking this very seriously.
There's no way Lea's gonna miss this one. She knows that.
Gerard, why don't you first tell me what your favorite TV show was?
Yeah.
And let's see if
it's-
she matches.
See if it's right.
Yeah.
The Incredible Hulk.
Oh, I'm
That's
so
you.
stupid.
That was my favorite.
What do
TV
you
show.
have, Leia? What do you
I
have?
had Mazinger Z up. I had that. That was his
Well,
favorite robot
but
show,
it was my
this
favorite
one.
cartoon. That was my favorite cartoon. Yeah. So she is right. She is
We
right.
can't count that as right. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm
All right.
sorry.
Leia, what was your favorite TV show?
Well, I used to watch The Hulk with Gerard, but I don't think it was my favorite TV show. When I was a kid, it was Voltus 5. It was another like Japanese animation television show, kind of like what Voltron is. I mean, it's the same people who animated it back then. But yeah, it was these five vehicles, and then they came together and formed this big giant robot. That was like my favorite when I was a kid.
That's your final answer.
Yeah.
All right. Go, Gerard.
What did you put down?
Ding 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 ding
can't
ding ding ding
Ding,
ding
ding,
ding
ding,
ding.
Voltus 5. What was the other one?
Wow.
I just said cartoons because I knew you like cartoons. Until you grew up, you just kept watching
yeah.
cartoons.
More than
And then it
I
occurred to
still
me,
watch
Voltus
cartoons.
5, yeah.
All right, this one, you just need to put the answer. Who gets more stressed before a big performance?
Who gets more stressed?
Which of you is more stressed before a big performance? Let's see if you agree. Gerard, who do you
Okay.
think?
For me, it's equal.
Oh, please.
Equal.
Yeah, it's
All right, let's
because
hear the real story here.
I get clammy hands before a performance. It's just something I've learned to deal with. I warm them up, I dry them up before I have to shake the concertmaster's hand, so I don't give him a shock. But uh, basically, I get pretty jacked up, And she's the only other person whose hand I felt before performance who's as clammy and cold as mine.
Lea, are you equals?
Nope.
Not even close?
Oh wow!
Not even close. I think that he gets more stressed than I do, especially in concerts, because he has more people to. I think more can go wrong in his department, I guess. And then there's he has 60 or however many people in front of him. In concerts, the one person I usually have to worry about, I never have to worry about him, but I have to worry about me. And so my stress is internal. It's okay, I can't crack, I can't go out of tune, I can't go. So it's that. He has to worry about himself and a gazillion other people in front of him. So I would imagine that the weight is greater, I guess. I don't necessarily think about the audience's reaction. It's the stuff that I am in control of. But I would think that he gets more stressed than I do because of just how many people he has to also worry about at the same time. And right
I think
in
it
front of him,
varies too. I think it varies too, sis, because you know this, John. The difference between performing a solo recital or conducting an orchestra is the things you are in control of. The amount of, what a lot of engineers and what some of my colleagues here refer to as points of failure. You've got so many more potential points of failure, and it all boils down to how well you trust the orchestra and how well the orchestra trusts you. So that can really vary. I mean, if it's an orchestra I really don't trust, then you can bet I'll be really stressed out. But if the rehearsals went well and you build up the trust quickly enough in the week during rehearsals, then the performance is, you feel really free, because that's sort of the goal, to
Yeah.
feel that sort of freedom in the
Right.
performance.
Well, the
Yeah,
only
so
other person I have to worry about is the teleprompter operator
or mom.
or mom.
Always,
but even
always
then,
mom.
she'll always, yeah, but she'll always sit there and she'll always be happy and she'll always enjoy what's happening. But then whenever we do concerts together, there's always a surprise hidden inside the concert that she has no idea is about to come after her. And so when we do the final dress rehearsal, we don't do that number. We keep her out of the room when we have to finally rehearse it together. And usually it's just a singular piano, and then all the orchestra is just watching this happen. And yeah, and so we sang something for my mom at the last concert that I did. And yeah, she was crying. And of course, Gerard starts crying. And it was very, very sweet. It was very, very, very sweet.
You don't need a photo from that one, John. You don't.
I was about to ask you for that.
Yeah, but there is a YouTube video that exists, though.
You guys just emit so much positivity and trust as siblings and entertainers, and I guess as role models too. Gerard, first of all, any words of advice for siblings and family members that are separated during this really tough time? How you're getting through it?
Well, it's important to just keep the communication going. It takes a lot of effort, just things you take for granted. When you're at home with everybody, you wake up and they're there, before you go to sleep, they're there. But that's not the case anymore. So you have to really put energy into reaching out to them to communicate. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. Just make sure I'm talking to people every day. Just keep in touch with the kids. I've been away from my kids for 3 months, and I've missed. This is the longest I've ever been separated from my family. Yeah, and I'm really feeling it. But you just got to keep talking to them. Just talk.
Now, Lea, you have recorded for us a tune that kind of encapsulates this optimism that we all need right now. And
Right.
I want you to tell us a little bit about this tune, and let me get you started with a photo we found online.
I love it. I love it.
I was about 8 when that photo was taken, and it was a photo shoot for an upcoming production of Annie, which I got to do when I was 9 here in Manila, and then later on again when I was about 12. And so the song that I'm about to do comes from that musical, and it has become an anthem of hope and optimism and looking forward to a brighter future. And I guess for these very strange and anxiety-filled times, I don't think that there's a better song than this one to kind of get us geared up and looking forward to what the future is going to bring.
So guys, thank you so much for this conversation. Gerard, I know you visit us. You have visited us, and I hope you'll visit us more and more. And Lea, our whole orchestra is just waiting for you to come. I hope that will be something in the cards as well. But thanks, guys.
Thank you, John. Great to be talking to you here, and hope it won't be too long till I actually see you in person again. See you, Lichin and Jeremy. Hopefully one day all three of us will be on stage together. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, John, for having us. Thank you for this conversation. And yeah, I hope to get to perform with you guys.
Now let's enjoy the Ever Optimistic Tomorrow from Annie, sung by the ever enchanting little orphan Lea. Good night, everyone.
Bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Just thinking about tomorrow clears away the cobwebs and the sorrow till there's none. When I'm stuck with the day that's gray and lonely, I just stick out my chin and grin and say the sun will come out tomorrow, so you gotta